The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. We have a very exciting show planned for you today. We're going to be starting off with, Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is here with us live in the studio. She'll be taking your questions in this first hour. Emily's going to show you some of the different ways that you can participate with us. I'm going to remind you that if you go to www.autism-live.com, you will have the ability not only to watch the live show, but there's a white box next to the screen that allows you to put your cursor there, type whatever you want, hit enter, and it shows up magically on my screen here, so we can be asking Dr. Grandpichet your questions in real time. So that's a very exciting thing. Also want to remind all of you that we are participating in a study right now, asking people to watch our show and other autism shows. If you're interested in participating in that study, make sure that you're writing into us to participate in that. I do believe that all of the free Rokus that we were giving away are spoken for, but we still have room for people to participate if you're watching on an Android tablet. It will give you an opportunity to see not only our show, but many other shows having to do with autism and give your feedback. So we encourage you to do that. But right now, it is time for Ask Dr. Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grandpichet.
Dr. Grandpichet.
Dr. Doreen Grandpichet.
Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is a visionary in the field of autism, and now you get to ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is here with us in the studio. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
It's so wonderful to have you here and to have someone who has as much experience as you have with autism and has as much of a vision as you have for autism to be able to answer our viewers' questions in real time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Well, I don't want to belabor. I want to get to as many questions as possible because you guys have written in through the night overwhelmingly. But I do want to remind all of you as we start the show that no one on the show can give child-specific advice, including Dr. Grandpichet. This format wouldn't allow for it. It would be a disservice to our children, but Dr. Grandpichet will give some general guidelines that maybe raise some more questions. Correct, Dr.
That's
Grandpichet?
right. Yeah, that's right. We just want to make sure our viewers know that we can't give them exact direction, but we will, of course, try to be as helpful as we can.
And we've heard overwhelmingly from our viewers that it's been so helpful to have access to your brilliant mind on so many of these different topics. Okay. So we have on the Facebook, somebody has written in saying, I want to know how to start teaching executive functioning skills when I sit down at home to do homework with a second grader. Executive function skills. How do we start that?
Well, that's, okay, it's difficult to answer this because it's like saying, I really want to start teaching social skills.
Yeah.
So the best, thank God that we have skills. So what I would do if I was this family is I would become a member of Skills, and I would go into the executive functioning assessment, answer all of those questions. Second grader would probably be perfect because their age might be somewhere around 7 or 8, so that's terrific. You'll end up answering quite a lot of questions, and then after you've done that, the system will, and the questions are about what the child can and cannot do. Can your child do this? Can your child do that? And so on. And then it'll take you to the curriculum, and then it'll give you the entire array of skills that your child needs to learn in the area of executive functioning, and they will be listed as lessons with videotapes, and it'll kind of show you exactly which one comes first, what prerequisites perhaps from other areas like language or something you still need to work on before you can teach these. If they're age appropriate, all that sort of stuff. So it's too broad a subject, and there are too many areas in executive functioning skills, so I really would suggest you do it this way. This is the best way to do it.
And it's a great curriculum. I personally have learned things from my life from the executive functions curriculum. And this brings up for me the first time that I ever met you, Dr. Grandpichet, was an amazing day, and you were unveiling skills.
Oh, right.
My child had been getting therapy from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders for years, but I'd been invited to see skills unveiled.
Right.
And I was so thrilled because I got to meet you. And at one point, you were describing for me that there used to be this big piece of yellow paper that you guys would put on the wall of a room, and it would go almost all the way around the room, that would list all of the skills that a child would start to develop by the time they reached age 8.
Well, we did this, the development of skills was ridiculous. I mean, it was like, I think when we added it all up, it was like over the course of 16 years that we made skills. But yeah, the paper you're talking about was actually what, I guess, lessons, or we used to begin in the old days, we used to call them drills. And they were all listed on, we had put them on this paper in order to put them in order of what relates to what. And like, for instance, can I teach conversational speech if I don't have this, I need these areas of language first, and how they relate to each other, and like, actually, should I be teaching conversational speech if my child doesn't have eye contact yet, and all these types of things. And it was amazing. I mean,
and I would imagine overwhelming. As you were describing this to me, I thought, what an amazing piece of paper, and that I'd love to have access to it. But as a parent, I immediately felt overwhelmed, like I wouldn't know where to start. I'd feel like I needed to start on the far left with number 1, when in actuality, and what you described to me was, you said for different child, they may need to start on 394 to be effective.
Right.
And another child may need to start on 22 to be effective.
Right.
And that skills was going to be able to give the power of figuring that out to a parent. And I still get chills thinking about how powerful that is.
Right. That's thank you, because we did so much work on skills that I didn't think of it in pieces like that. But the assessment portion is powerful. It really does help identify everything that a child needs, and across all domains, not just executive functioning. I mean, and we put so much, as you know, I mean, we put several $1 million of resources into staff who worked on this project for over 15 years. So, but the key to it is, I don't think anything like this actually exists, where you will, just by going through, first of all, we listed everything, then we listed lessons that correspond to it, then we went back and age modified. So we said by corresponding it to tests, to standardized tests, and we validated skills, and we said, okay, so basically, if you were 2, you shouldn't even be doing this. If you're 4, you won't have developed this skill. If you're 8, you should be doing all of these things, And so then we correlated all of the age norms to it and moved the questions around, so that a parent, when you become a member of skills, you put your child's age, and so you don't get questions that are not relevant to your child. You only get what your child should be doing. And then we went ahead and linked it to lessons in the curriculum. We made sure every lesson in the curriculum had prerequisites listed. All of the majority of the lessons now have video clips. We put IEP objectives on them. We gave teaching goals. I mean, I can't even tell you. It was a ridiculous endeavor.
It's exhaustive. It is. But what it boils down to for me as a parent is, it gives me the ability to be effective and efficient and empowered, that I can now, and I know where to start. And I feel like, and that's one of the reasons why I want to cover this, because this parent, in a way, I feel like they're asking, where do I start?
Right.
How do I start?
Right.
That's the hardest part, and skills empowers you to be able to do that.
It does. It really does. And yesterday I was meeting with Eliana, who's in charge of skills, and I was instructed that I can't talk too much about all the new stuff that's coming because we had a 3-hour meeting yesterday where I was reviewing all the new things that we're adding to skills, and it's incredible stuff coming.
I'm
a lot
so
of amazing
excited.
stuff coming. So, but I do recommend for this parent, it would be very good to do that.
And so you can go to skillsforautism.com, check that out. There is a free trial period that you can try it out and see how it works. And feel free to write in with questions because I personally love Skills and use it. And Skills has its own place where you can call and ask questions, but we take questions here as well.
And also, I mean, it's funny, I never really thought about this, but I don't think there is another way that you can do what you want to do for this parent. Like, you can only read books on executive functioning, and they're not going to be able to determine what areas. I mean, executive functioning, we're talking flexibility, inhibition, planning, programming. I mean, there's a lot of different areas in executive functioning, joint attention. And you won't even be able to determine which ones your child can do and can't do, except for using skills.
Absolutely.
So I really do recommend it. It's well worth it.
Amazing, amazing tool. We are going to take a break right now, and we'll be back with more of your questions for Dr. Doreen Grandpichet after these messages. Stick with us.
Hi everyone. In the cold winter months, it can be really nice to sit down and enjoy a nice, warm apple crisp. And thanks to Breads from Anna, we can make one for you gluten and yeast-free. So let's go over what we're going to need. To make the filling, you're going to need 1½ teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice, 7 cups of Granny Smith apples, and 3 tablespoons of Breads from Anna pie crust. For your topping, you're going to need 1 cup of rolled oats, 1/3 cup of brown sugar, 3/4 of a cup of Breads from Anna pie crust mix, 3/4 of a cup of butter melted, 1 teaspoon ground cinnamon, 1 tablespoon vanilla, and 2 tablespoons of water. Don't forget to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. So now let's cut some apples. We're going to peel and slice 6 apples. So as you're cutting your apples, make sure you add your lemon juice to make sure that they don't brown and oxidize. So once all my apples are cut and sliced, I'm going to go ahead and add the nutmeg, cinnamon, and the pie crust mix. We're just going to stir these together. So we've got a 13 by 9, and we're just going to spray this with a little bit of grapeseed oil. And then we're going to pour our apples into the dish. And to make our topping, we're just going to combine the rest of the ingredients in a small bowl. All right, that looks pretty good. We're just going to pour this evenly over the top of the apples, and we should be good to go. All right, this is ready to bake, 30 to 35 minutes at 350 degrees. It's been 30 minutes, so our crisp should be all done. All right, it's pretty hot, so you would probably want to let it sit for a little while, but we're going to go ahead and serve up a slice here. To learn how you can win free mix from Breads from Anna, visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/autism-live. See you soon.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We have with us in the studio right now Dr. Doreen Grandpichet, and she is a true expert in the field of autism. It's such a thrill to have her here. She is answering your questions in real time. I've got a question here that just came in on the live feature. Hello, Dr. Doreen. My daughter, 7 years old, is screaming suddenly since the last 2 weeks. It's usually right after we say, let's do this, or sit for dinner, go change, etc. Even with simple simple requests, like while sitting doing work, she will scream if we ask, write cap while she is drawing, for example. How can we work with the screaming? This is new for us. Please help us here. Thank you.
Right. So that's a great example. In fact, I might use that example for teaching. Every single example that this parent wrote, that you just read, Shannon, was a demand or was a request, no matter what it was, how easy it seems to us. But every single example showed that your daughter screams when you ask her to do something. All of the examples were those. So that is a very, very clear situation that she is objecting. In other words, the function of her screaming is to try to avoid doing what it is, anything. She just doesn't want to comply with the demands that you're making or the requests that you're making. So what you do is you simply ignore the screaming and you physically prompt her to actually do the things that you were asking her to do. Could you read some of the examples again, what they were?
Yes, let's go through some of the examples. So it's when they request saying, right after we say, let's do this, sit for dinner, go
Right,
change.
So sit for dinner, she screams, ignore it as if it didn't happen, go ahead and help her come and sit down. Go change, she screams, ignore it as if it didn't happen, go just take her and change her clothes. Any of those things. In other words, the message that you're giving back to her is screaming won't make a difference.
Okay.
And be ready for this, so you might want to put some earplugs in, because before it goes away, it will go up, it'll increase. So that's called an extinction burst. What happens is from in her thinking, whenever in the past she screamed, you would probably back off, right? So she'd scream and you'd be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't force her right now, and then I'll ask her again in 5 minutes. So it was effective for her to get away. Her screaming had become an effective form of communication. She would scream, you'd leave her alone. Now she's screaming, you're not going to leave her alone. You're going to actually physically prompt her to do the thing you asked her to do. And so from her perspective, it's going to be like, wait a minute, why aren't they responding to my screaming? I think I'll scream a little bit longer, a little bit louder, that sort of thing. So be ready for the behavior of screaming to increase initially, but then if you stick with it, within a few days, it'll just completely go away.
Yeah. From a parent's perspective, it really is getting yourself in the mindset of, okay, I'm going to go through a couple of really bad days.
Correct.
But the mantra that I used to have in my head was, this is the beginning of the end of this.
That's right.
Just have to get through this. I got to hold tight and clear your schedule. This is not the time to be expecting the important phone call for the job interview during this. But if you hold your ground, it will go away. But it's a tough time.
It is a tough time, and you also need to. One way to make it faster is to give her an alternative, more appropriate way to communicate what she's trying to communicate. So she's trying to say no. Essentially, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
So, you could give her, prompt her or teach her to say, I need 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't do it right now. I would first start to extinguish the behavior of screaming. So I would first just ignore it and physically prompt her through the thing she's supposed to do. When she's gotten a little bit better with that, so maybe in a week, then I would start to give her the ability to ask for time. So can I do it in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Which is really something that other kids do.
Yeah.
How often do you ask a kid, go do something and they do it immediately?
Yeah. Well, great advice, and we're sending you air hugs through
I know, yes.
because you'll have a couple of rough days. You're already having a couple of rough days.
And if you have a behaviorist working with you, if you know one, this is a pretty easy, it's a very basic procedure for behaviorists, and I really do recommend it. As Shannon said, it'll help your sanity if you're not involved with it.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got another question coming in from Facebook. How do I get my son to be less physically aggressive with me? He's okay with others for the most part, but tends to be quite aggressive during learning time. Any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of ideas, but I don't know that, depending on how big he is, I'm not sure, and how big you are, and how exactly what you mean when you say aggressive. There's no question there's a lot you can do there. You know, I'll go back, and the previous behavior was screaming, this behavior is aggression. I've often said that kids with autism don't having challenging behaviors like aggression or screaming, or these things are not part of autism. They're just a form of communication. The child is trying to communicate and say, you know, I don't want to do this, or leave me alone, or those types of things. And it's always the same intervention, which is you ignore the behavior that's challenging, and you help the child communicate in a different way that's more adaptive, which is pretty much how I answered the previous question. But when it becomes something that's aggression, you can't ignore aggression, so it's hard to ignore it, so you have to block it. And depending on how big he is and how big you are and how far the aggression has gone, blocking it might exacerbate it. So it's hard for me to answer this question without knowing a lot more about what's going on. I really do. You know, there's another thing we have online called the BIP builder or BIP builder, which is right now part of skills, and I'm actually trying to split it off and separate it so that people can access it separately. But if you look at that, the way that works is it asks you a lot of questions about, for instance, the aggression. It'll ask you when it happens, what type of behaviors are there, like is it hitting, biting, pushing, what kicking, you know, all of these are considered aggression. In all the scenarios that it happens, all this sort of stuff, how do you normally consequate it? And it asks you, those are the things we need to know as behaviors. And when you answer those questions, the system will tell you why the aggression is happening, as well as exactly what to do, how to handle the aggression, and how you should change the scenario so that the aggression goes down. So that might be a way to go about doing this. Otherwise, if you know, and it does sound like you need help, what any behaviorist would do for you right now is what the BIP builder does. They're determining the function of the behavior. They're doing what's called a functional behavior analysis or assessment, and that will help you sort of identify why the child is doing this and how to treat it. Don't try to just punish behaviors. Don't try to just, you know, ignore them, because behaviors are they're really meaningful. Our kids do these behaviors because they're trying to communicate something, and it's really important to identify what it is they're trying to communicate, and then that gives you the key to how to stop that challenging behavior.
Yeah, a really important advice. We're going to take another break. We're going to come back with more questions. Keep them coming. You guys are writing in overwhelmingly. We love it. We're going to get through as many of them as we possibly can. Stick with us.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. For this month, I figured we're going to do a super special portrait that is in the theme of October, which means spooky eyes that follow you as you walk around. In this activity, you and your child are going to work on emotions and socio-dramatic play. So let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are a camera, a ping pong ball, X-Acto blade, tape, and a marker. And if your kids are up to it, props and costumes. Now let's take some photos. It's a great time to work on emotions and socio-dramatic play. Let's get our props.
See all the colors in the sky tonight. It's time to let the sunshine hide.
Once you've finished your photo shoot with your child, select one of the photos and print it out on a large piece of paper. Now that you've selected your photo, you're going to take an X-Acto blade and just cut out the eyes from it. This part of the activity is definitely only for the adults. Now that you've finished cutting out the eyes, what we're going to do next is take a ping pong ball and cut it in half. You'll see why in just a moment. So with the ping pong balls, we're going to create the illusion of the following eyes. So what you're going to do is take a marker and you're going to make a dot in the very, very center. You're going to want to make it like the same size of what the iris was in the photo. Now that the ping pong balls are done, I'm just going to tape them to the back of the photograph. So does it look like she's following you? Well, I hope you enjoyed this activity for Smarty. Until next time, craft on, guys.
Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grandpichet is here with us, and we're answering as many questions as we can in a short period of time. I want to go to this next one. Dr. Doreen, my son is 9 and has ASD. In school, he is disengaged a lot lately, not listening to the teacher or paying attention to instructions. He tries to participate, but when he gets called on, he doesn't know the answer, primarily because he's video talking and disengaged from the lesson. What can we do in class that might help him pay attention? He does have a full-time ABA aide at school.
Oh gosh, that's one that I could take the next hour and answer that. First of all, if he's disengaged, that tells me that he's lacking the skill to pay attention to the salient stimulus, which is the teacher. So if he was one of my kids, I'd want to go back a little bit and see what other prerequisite skills I would teach in order for him to learn to pay attention better. Paying attention is complicated. It's not just about, you can shape up the behavior of him looking at the teacher, for instance. You can also shape up the behavior of not doing video talk, but that still doesn't mean that he would be comprehending what the teacher is saying. So all of those different things have to be taught separately. It's like pay attention to someone, first of all, who's close to you, then further. Increase the duration of time that he's not doing video talk. Start with 1 minute and increase it to 10, 15-minute segments. But then, listening comprehension would be something that he'd have to be taught separately as well. Right now, so I would really, go back and teach some of these more important prerequisite skills. For now, where you are, I would make sure he's in the front row. I would ask the teacher to get his attention every 5 or 10 minutes by calling out his name or just tapping on his table or whatever is not so obvious, I guess, the least obvious prompt. There are watches that are called watch minders. They vibrate on a schedule, so every 5 minutes or whatever, and you look down and it says, look at the teacher. Mm-hmm. I mean, it literally has the thing on there. It writes out what you're supposed to do. As I said, you could put different stickers and so on the blackboard, on the whiteboard mm-hmm. nowadays, and look at it so that he's trained to look at it. If he has an aide, there's a billion things the aide can do by simply just sitting behind him to begin with and getting him to pay attention. And the most important thing to me, it sounds like, is listening comprehension right now. So you'd start with very small sentences at home, practicing him, making sure he understands. Sentences similar to what the teacher would say. Let's get out our books. Let's go to page 4, whatever. I don't know what class he's in or what types of instructions. But, those are some basic ideas right now.
Yeah. Lots of different things to choose from, but, depending upon the individual child.
Right. And it's just too hard because at the point when you're in class already, you should be able to pay attention. So it's always really hard to get to this point and then try to do intervention in the classroom, because now you're kind of disrupting the classroom, the teacher's going to be upset with you, all this sort of other stuff. So it's better to have done some of these things ahead of time, or to practice these things in a different environment and then generalize them to school.
What's interesting to me is that she says that it's just lately, that it's happening a lot lately. So there's a part of me that wonders if, it's just not reinforcing enough for him to pay attention.
That's of course very true. Often our kids start to really kind of tune out when it's boring, when the teacher is not rewarding enough. I don't know, maybe where he's sitting is distracting. Is he near a window? Is he under a light? Something like that. So if it's something that's brand new, look at other circumstances that may have changed.
Okay. All right. We have another question. Somebody wants to know, what are ways I can increase the motivation of a 7-year-old who only wants to play Wii and iPad? And this is just at 7. I hear this continues.
Oh yeah.
That once they get those in their hands, they kind of only want to do that.
Yeah, and that's not so bad. I mean, you're actually really, really lucky that your child likes Wii, because Wii is, so first of all, let me just say that the question is, it's a question that's hard for a behaviorist, because we all have different reinforcers, right? Mm-hmm. And so our motivations are tied to those reinforcers. That's just the way it is. You can spend a lot of time and you can set up a token economy or a token system where the end reinforcer is the Wii or the iPad, but in the meantime your child accumulates things like tokens or coins or smiley faces, which then have to be up to a certain number before they get the Wii. Ultimately, you're keeping the power of the Wii or the iPad, but you're making it contingent on many more steps, It's just like money, right? Money on its own is not really a reinforcer because it's a piece of paper.
Right.
But it is a reinforcer because with money we can purchase the things we want. So that's the same thing, put your child on a system where they accumulate coins, and then the coins they can trade in for the Wii now, or the iPad. What I want to say is, guaranteed in, like, let's say maybe 2 or 3 more years, there's going to be very little that doesn't involve technology. And right now, the Wii is actually a fabulous reinforcer because they have built so many different things on the Wii so your child is not really just sitting in front of a computer. They're dancing, they're playing tennis, they're doing yoga, they're doing boxing, they're doing a billion things, and it's awesome. And so it's actually a pretty good tool to use for social skills as well. So, you can put other contingencies. Yes, you can play with the Wii, but you have to play with someone else, like another child. So you can use the reinforcer in a million different ways. So, these are the suggestions. You can kind of set up a token system, or you can also use them for good reasons, but I wouldn't be too worried about it, to be honest with you. It does get to be a lot, and of course you can always, parents do set time limits on things, but I mean, nowadays, every child past 5th, 6th grade has an iPhone.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, well, this is where we're heading. We just need to embrace it, I think.
I think that's great advice. Okay, we're going to take another break, and we're going to be back with more of your questions after these messages. Stick with us.
Accept and embrace this challenge and keep the faith.
Welcome back. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpesheh for Ask Dr. Doreen. She is answering your questions in real time. I don't know whether it was last week or the week before, we had a parent write in about a fascination with strings and laces.
Oh, yes.
And they have an update. Hi, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. Oh, where am I? I'm in the wrong one. We've got so many different things here. I've scrolled to the wrong place. Here we go. Wanted to give you an update on my son's obsession for laces and strings. He is 6 years old on the spectrum. We found something more appropriate for him to play with. He uses a necklace at home and out in the community. I spoke to his teacher about having such an item near him, possible at his desk. His teacher agreed to have a lanyard on or near him, but he still runs to the shoe rack and plays with the laces on the sneakers, and we constantly redirect him to his necklace at home and school. How do we move forward from here? Do you suggest DRI and then in parentheses the intervals? You're over my head with the jargon, and thank you so much.
You are doing DRI. DRI is differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior. You're more or less doing that. You've replaced it with something else. So if he's playing with the lanyard, he's probably not at the same time going to be playing with the shoelace. One thing I do recommend, though, is to just block his access to the shoes. Like, instead of waiting for him to go every time to the shoes and then you redirect him. Block access. So in other words, put something in front of the shoes so that there's much more effort involved in terms of getting to the shoes. Because we want him to kind of try to start forgetting the shoes. You know, this is just going to be an obsession for a while, and it's a tough one. As I said, there are a lot of things in the world that are similar to a string or something like that. And the real question now becomes, if he holds the necklace or the lanyard, is he able to do other things, or is it extremely, I guess, is it obsessive in nature? So if he holds the lanyard or if he holds the necklace in his hand, is he able to pay attention? Is he able to answer questions, give eye contact, have social communication, write, read, whatever it is? If the answer to that is yes, good, then we're good to go and you could just leave it alone. If the answer to that is no, you want to start to try to practice those things. In other words, you can have the lanyard, but you still need to answer these 5 questions. And if you don't, we're going to take the lanyard away. So you have to now start to see if he can actually, in his mind, make the necklace or the lanyard become the secondary thing. So it doesn't cause him to be obsessing about it, but it's more just a safety thing, and he's holding on to it and he's able to move on and do other things. That's your next step. You know, and hopefully you get to a point where it takes on secondary importance. If it doesn't, if it becomes so pervasive in his mind and so obsessive in nature, we're just going to have to take it away and take everything away, which would be very difficult. So keep us updated on that and let us know if you can actually start with very basic activities and try to get him to respond to you while holding the lanyard, interacts, do some of his lessons, do maybe some interaction, some writing, some reading, that sort of thing.
Okay, great.
Oh, and then like another step would be if he starts to succeed at that, then you can also, like, for instance, have him put the lanyard or necklace in his pocket. So he still has it, but he's not necessarily visibly holding on to it.
Okay, great. You mentioned comprehension earlier. So somebody wrote in and said, hello, my 8-year-old son struggles with language comprehension and just an overall understanding of language in general. What can we do to help him? Thank you.
Well, that's an awesome question, and it is pretty much the key to everything. Yeah. So for that family, I really do recommend that you get on Skills, because that's what Skills is all about. And a lot of times I find that my kids start to get aggressive or upset or unhappy, act out, do all sorts of stuff, and it's only really because they don't understand what's going on. They don't understand what people are asking them, what they're directing them to do. There's too much going on. They can't read social cues. They don't understand language. So, Skills takes you very, I guess, at an appropriate pace through all the different areas of comprehension that your child needs. There's more than just one area. I mean, it starts with just basic labels and objects and language and, just very, very basic things, all the way up to part of comprehension also involves understanding, I guess, irony or intentions. Like if I say something and my intention is something else, typically a child already past the age of 6 or 7 can read that, can understand that, and our kids often can't. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of body and facial expression and body posturing and stuff that goes into language. In addition to basic things like vocabulary and advanced use of, grammatical structure and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of things that you can do. You just have to go back and start from a point that makes sense. And again, see, for a child like this who sounds like it's a high-level child, you can't start from the very beginning. They'll be bored to death, which is why the assessment will help you, because you'll start exactly where it's hard for your child.
Yeah. There's
Even skills, that's what skills is for.
And there's even lessons in the academic curriculum that help the child to differentiate different vowel sounds that they might be confusing. It's very comprehensive. It's very impressive. Very helpful. Okay. Another person would like to know, how can I get my child off meds for ADHD that are not working? Today I received a call from the principal that my child is playing in the bathroom and lunchroom. My son says bully is taking his lunch and don't know if what he's saying is a lie. He's very loud and anxious, hungry, overweight, don't know how to help my child. They go on to write that their ulcer is bothering them because they're anxious over what's wrong with the child, that the child's going through puberty. And they are in Connecticut, and they say that trying to work with the school has always been a nightmare. A lot going on there.
Oh, yeah, very, very, a lot going on there. I don't think I can give you any specific advice because I really think you're at a point where you need a little bit of help. I mean, first of all, I'm concerned if the parent has an ulcer already, so you really need some help. I'm trying to figure out, Connecticut is actually a bad state in terms of insurance coverage. It's one of those states where we really don't want to get involved because parents don't have hardly any coverage. Wow. The mandate's written in a bad way. But I do think you have some resources in terms of, I know that we've been in a variety of schools. We've been in there to train aides and to get aides for our kids. You know, you need an aide in the classroom or in the school with your child because we have to find out if he's being bullied, first of all. Right. And it sounds like you also need an aide because your child has become his most important reinforcer has become food. And, you know, if I don't know the age or size of your child, but this is getting to be a little bit too much for a parent to handle. It's a different thing than you know, telling a parent how to teach a 2-year-old. This is a little bit more complicated. I guess what I would recommend is start with the IEP process. See if, I know it's very hard with schools, believe me, I've been dealing with school districts for most of my career, so I know it's very hard. But I also know that some of our like our Rochester office, we've trained a lot of school districts in that area, in the Monroe County area. I know that our Larchmont office in New York does actually send supervisors up to Connecticut. You're welcome to call them and see if they can help you. But my primary recommendation would be to really try to get help from the school district, because the Free and Appropriate Education Act says that, you know, you are supposed to get an appropriate education, and it is really the responsibility of the school district to provide you with an aide if your child needs an aide. And if your child's being bullied, they need an aide. Yeah. You know, so I would really start with calling an IEP. It's tough. It's really difficult. I hate to leave parents with just that advice because I know that there's a million steps after that.
Yeah, and you know, there's also there are laws in place. So when bullying is not allowed on any school, but if your child has a recognized disability, there's a different level of it that it's called handicap harassment, disability harassment. The school has to pay extra attention to it, and even if you're not sure that it's happening, as you said, that's got to be first. We have to solve that. And if the child perceives it that way, I don't know that it necessarily, of course it matters if it's actually happened versus the child perceiving it, but it's still important if it's not happening and the child just perceives it that way, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's absolutely very important. The problem I find, Shannon, is that in California, the parents in California have been so active and involved that they've taught school districts to take them seriously. Yeah. So not only school districts, but all public agencies have learned to really pay attention to when a family here would go and say, hey, my child is being bullied. They really react to that. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if it's the same in Connecticut, because you're talking about you know, you might have a school administrator or teacher who really doesn't think that parents are all that powerful, And they might ignore it, not understanding that this is a huge issue in the law and you can't be bullying kids.
There are actual government offices that you can call and have, they will come in and investigate.
Well,
And,
that's really good.
Yes.
That might be something helpful.
And so we'll make sure that we get that link up for you. It's like the government.edu.gov. I'll get the link for you because I can't remember it off the top of my head. But there is a government office that is in place just to be able to investigate those kinds of things.
I think that's fabulous.
So something to think about. Here is a very interesting question that you could take a week on, or just a simple answer. But somebody wants to know: is ABA effective for treating autism? Love it.
Yeah, that's a nice question. I guess. Yeah, that's a really.
It could be a long one or a short one.
Well, obviously, yeah, it's very effective. It is the most effective intervention, and that's why the government pays for it. That's the only reason that we have now funding in all different areas. So we have, not only does the Department of Education support it and pays for it through school districts. A lot of school districts are now being trained to provide ABA. The Department of Developmental Services funds it through, in California it's called regional centers. In other states we have a lot of other types of DDS funding. It is Medicare funded, and now it is private insurance funded. So it is the #1 accepted treatment for autism, and it is very effective. It's not a miracle overnight cure. It's not like you can start ABA and a week later you're done. It's not like that. It's very, very hard work, a long time, intensive, and it will be hugely effective for any individual, no matter what age. But it can only really bring about recovery if you do what's called EIBI, which is early intensive behavioral intervention, which means, if a child starts intervention at 7 or 8, it might be already too late to fully recover, but if your child starts intervention at 2 or 3 and does really intensive work, so we're talking 25, 35, 40 hours a week of one-to-one ABA, then they have a pretty good chance of recovery.
Okay. I've been meaning to get to this question for a while. Hi, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. My son seems to be very clingy to me, and I'm not sure if there's anything I can do to help his fear or anxiety that he has. He is 4 and always has to have me in the room or know where I am. He needs me to sleep with him and have a hand or a foot touch me to know that I'm still there. Only I can console him and always wants me to play with him only. I try to just enjoy it because I know one day it will end, but I feel like it may be anxiety and I don't want him to feel this. Any ideas on how to wean him off, or maybe Shannon experienced this as well and has some suggestions? Thank you for all you do. Love this show. 2 loves. We love you too.
Thank you. There's a lot of things you can do. First thing is you have to make up your mind that you want to wean him off, because this is a hard one. It's very, very reinforcing for you. And it's period.
Well, and that's true, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's the most reinforcing thing for us, for when our kids are that attached to us. The truth is, though, that you need to wean him off. You do need to wean him off. I mean, 4 is still pretty young, but if he's getting that needy, you do need to wean him off, because in essence, your presence is going to close him off to interacting with the rest of the world. And so I would start with, and when you say needs, we all need, who wouldn't want to be, we have needs that are just not socially possible. So every child would love to just stay at home and not go to school and hang out with mom, So what you need to do is just establish, you wrote a lot of different scenarios where he needs to be with you or he wants to be with you. My real question is to you, what happens if he's not? What happens if you, place a small distance between yourself and him? I would start with probably the most drastic ones right now, which are, I think, physical contact ones.
Yes.
I mean, it's one thing to be in the presence of your child. It's another thing that he can only sleep with you, I think, is one of the things you said.
Has to have a hand or a foot touching.
Right. So what I would do is I would just start there, and it's a very, very, very gradual fade out. So, you know, you can give him an object like a stuffed animal or something, put your perfume on it, try to have that gradually replace you. You know, right now, if he has to have a hand and a foot on you, then reduce it to one. If it's just one hand or foot, now you want to reduce it to fingers touching and gradually, you know, put more and more distance between that. But replace yourself with something. It is anxiety. Every child goes through this. This is why every child most children will have a hard time adjusting to just sleeping on their own. So right now I'm not even saying have him sleep on his own. I'm saying just gradually start to distance yourself physically. You may later want to have a little bed for him next to you, and then gradually distance yourself from the bed. If you're sleeping in his room, I assume. Now, the other things are like, I don't know, what was it other than sleeping with mom? It was
being in the same room.
Right.
Wants her to play with him only.
So being in the same room is a very easy one. You can also start with that one where basically you can, he's playing and you can stand by the door. And then the next day you're standing one step outside the door, and then 2 days later you're standing three steps outside the door, and you just do it at a pace that's comfortable for him. At the same time, you do need to replace yourself, so you'd want to have other kids in there or other people so that he's not alone, so he's able to interact, or you want to have activities or toys that are distracting him, perhaps the Wii, perhaps something like TV or something he's going to prefer.
Absolutely.
Did you go through something like that with Jem?
We still cycle through times when he gets clingy, and I was just thinking about it, that he used to do something that he would climb us like we were a tree. He wanted to get on our heads, both my husband and I. And I would always notice that it was when he had a lot of yeast that was active. He would just be incredibly, it was like he wanted to crawl inside you, but he would sit on your head. And we recently have gone through a phase where, because he's in 5th grade now, and he still, there are times when he wants to sit on our laps, and he's almost as tall as me because he's a very tall boy. And I had to say to him, you know, not in public anymore. We had to draw lines. And the other day we were in a restaurant and he was having a moment, and I know it was anxiety. I saw it on him. And we kept separating it. He had to ask us before he could give anybody a hug. And then he had to ask us before he got on our lap. So he said to my husband in the restaurant, "Can I get on your lap?" And it was hard for my husband because he especially knows that any minute this will be over for him. I'm still going to get to be a little touchy-feely because I'm mom, but it's going to be over for him. And I said, "No, you can't get on Dad's lap." But we went over some of the things that we taught him in 3rd grade to squeeze himself, that he could hold himself. And that he could talk to himself while he was holding himself, and realize that we were right there and that nothing bad was happening.
See, and that's fabulous advice, because really it's a matter of identifying the things that our kids can use to help them feel more secure in themselves. This is really just a good skill for anyone. It's not just, you know. So to broadly answer the questions of this mom, and I would love to help more, because it is anxiety, no question, but it is not unique to our kids, and so you do need to treat your child just like any other child. And a child who gets too clingy, too attached, you are enabling the child to close off to the rest of the world, and also to do things that, as you said, Shannon, might not be age appropriate or might not really help the child with socialization. But give them other things. I mean, you know, give them stuffed animals, give them other things that are more socially appropriate, you know, that will make them feel, like I said, maybe a keychain or something that has a family picture in it, maybe an object that smells like you. You know, there's different things you can do.
There are kids that have worry rocks. Of course, you want to make sure that it's not one that would be a choking hazard, but there are rocks that just feel good to put your thumb on, and they can keep in their pocket and play with them sometimes. There are all different kinds of fidget toys. There are things. We were talking about a couple of weeks ago that Rosie O'Donnell used to have those cush things that were on her desk. When she was interviewing people, she would get nervous, and so she would play with those.
Interesting.
So, you know.
And again, it's just a commitment. You have to be committed to this, because this is very hard, and you have to like step away from it gradually as a parent.
Yeah. But I think, you know, they'll still be affectionate. It's not like giving up them
Don't
ever
worry.
hugging you.
No, not at all. In fact, because it won't be 100% of the time, they will start to appreciate it a little bit more. So the times that they are with you will be very nicely, they'll be very affectionate, and the interaction will be much more. But think of how happy you'll be that you can walk out, and how are you going to integrate into school if this is the level of attachment?
Okay, great. I think we've got time for one more question. Some friends of ours, fans of ours from Florida, have written in saying that their daughter still runs to other kids' arms, any kid, and some adults. We try to prevent/block, but she's way too fast, and when she does, we say, ask for a high five, and she does, but it's a constant struggle. It requires to hold her hand while in front of a child. What do we say when this happens? Or do, it seems nothing works. Thank you for everything. And they say they have no words to express.
Oh, that's awesome. So, but my question is, have you actively worked on this? So, I mean, sometimes we think that because something happens in the moment in the society, in normal life, we work on it. You're not really working on it. You're only working on it when it happens. So, I would literally get another child or another person and set up this scenario and work on it actively. So in other words, if you bring another child who's sort of your confederate, or the child that works with you, and you have your child, and your child's about to run to their arms, and you block it and you reinforce your child, gradually you will reduce your blocking so that your child starts to understand that they cannot run to the other child if they want their reinforcer. So the reinforcer has to be very powerful, and your child has to get the message. Sometimes, I don't know if I'm getting too technical for parents, but it has to be that maybe you give the instruction, wait, or no hugging. And if the child is able to stand in the presence of another child for 10 seconds, they'll get a powerful reinforcer. And then you increase that with the child. So next set, you could do all this in 1 hour, and you have the other child, and then it's like, now that your child is not hugging the other child for 1 minute, then for 5 minutes, then for whatever it is, and gradually that behavior will extinguish. If your child is doing that, they're either seeking out the sensory contact, or they're just affectionate, and this is their way of saying hello. And so you would want to make sure you replace that and teach your child other appropriate ways to say hello, like giving high five is a great one, or just things like, hi, how are you? My name is, teach them some other appropriate social behavior to replace that.
Thank you, because I think I confuse sometimes. I say we're working on something because I'm working on it in the moment.
Right.
And I get frustrated because why aren't we seeing the progress? When you guys say all the time on this show that giving the child opportunity and immediate feedback is what we know is most effective. So if we pull the circumstance outside of itself,
outside of reality, right?
Right. Take a moment and give and say a half an hour, an hour, give them 20 opportunities.
Exactly. Then
you're going to get more done.
They'll get it, right.
And I don't think of that sometimes, so thank you for making that distinction.
No, sure, and that's ABA. That's the success of ABA, is repetitive practice in a very sort of experimental environment where you can modify antecedents and consequences, and then you gradually bring it into normal life and it generalizes.
Yes.
But if you just dealing with it, then you're doing, when it happens, that's more NET, natural environment training. Natural environment training is not always effective with new skills, and especially with it if it's a skill that involves an obsession or an urge or anxiety or something like that. The anxiety associated or the urge to hug another child is more pervasive than holding back.
Yeah.
So you need to practice it in sort of a very closed environment.
Really incredible, and we're out of time, but I thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom.
Always a pleasure.
Now, we're not here next week with Dr. Grant-Pichet. We're not just next week, but we'll be back the week after, and so we'll look forward to seeing you then in 2 weeks.
Sounds very good. Thank you, Shannon.
All right, we are going to take a short break, and during which we're going to see the A Word. This is the ongoing documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2, and he is having the benefit of that EIBI that Dr. Grant-Pichet was talking about, that early intensive behavioral intervention. So you can take a look. He is about 2 years into his therapy now and see the progress that he's making, that he is now doing things that are more NET on the playground, interacting with kids, and we're seeing how that goes. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And our very special guest today, Dr. Andrew Wakefield, is going to be with us via Skype, and that will be a very exciting interview. You won't want to miss it. Stick with us.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast. Yes, I do. I say Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Jack, Jack, Jack is my buddy. Everybody around is so down with Jack.
I think Suzanne has her camera to take a picture of me.
That's true. What are you doing today?
I'm going to the park.
And what are we going to do at the park?
Say hi to 5 kids.
Cool.
Let's do it, Jack. I think there are a lot of kids out here. Hi.
Jessica, Jack Riley, and Dad are at the park again to give Jack Riley an opportunity to socialize with peers. Here, unlike at school, Jessica can observe to see how he's doing and prompt him when necessary. Their goal today is to say hi to 6 kids and have them get used to using several different phrases to initiate conversation. As they go on more outings, Jessica will prompt him less and the conversations will become more natural.
You want to come play with me, guys? What's your thing? I'm building a tower. I found a rock.
I used to be terrified to come to a park.
How old is he now?
He's 4.
He's 4.
Since December.
Yeah, we had issues and doubts with him at some point.
Yeah. It's the best thing that happened for us, though, because then you go get the services that you need as opposed to just waiting and waiting and waiting for him to get. So he's had 2 years of fantastic help.
And now he's talking and
talking and conversations. Now he won't shut up. Okay, go to sleep.
Yeah.
Daddy, but wait. Right, thanks very much. My name's Mike.
My name's Ronnie.
Ronnie, nice to meet you. Today was a great day at the park. For me, too. I met some nice people. I don't think anyone there, aside from the camera, thought there was anything different about my son.
No, what made today so good?
Just he was playing with other kids. He was engaging. I didn't think about the A word, autism, the whole time. I was just thinking, there's my kid playing with other kids. That's a lie. I always think about it, I guess, but I don't know. He was calm. He was having fun. I've seen the last 2 days. I've seen joy on his face for extended periods of time. I don't know. He's making progress, man.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to another What's Left in Cooking Friendly for Kids with Allergies. And what we're going to make today is a pizza crust. We got lots of emails and I really appreciate all the feedback. A lot of folks have been asking about what pizza crust is yeast-free, no eggs, and no gluten and all the other fun stuff. So we're going to take that challenge head on. And if anyone who likes New York type style thin crust pizza, that's what we're going for today. We're going to start with 1.5 cups of almond flour. Now for folks who have allergies with nuts, there's a great bread pizza crust mix from Anna's that I really like. It's another great alternative for people who are avoiding a lot of carbs and sugars. So I like this one as well. So Jamie's going to get the flaxseed meal going, and now let's talk about the starches. What's really important about this recipe to get that crisp New York style pizza crust is arrowroot. I I love arrowroot starch. It has a lot to offer for binding and pulling this recipe together. And I also have my coconut oil. I'm a big fan of coconut oil. You've heard me talk about that many times. Next, we're going to add in our spices. I like a little spices. If you've got a kid that doesn't like spices, it's okay, but I've gone really light in the oregano and basil. So we're going to go ahead and add that in with the baking soda. And for folks who like a little sweetness, I do like maple syrup a lot. But you can just add just a wee bit for flavor. I use typically maybe a half a teaspoon. So what's great about what Jamie's helping me with now, it's great for kids that have digestive issues. It gives a great deal of fiber and also allows a binding, like what you would look for in a gluten flour. This is a great gluten-free option. And this is a modified recipe from the website Real Sustenance. I love those guys. They do a great job, but I always like to tweak things. I appreciate them. Shout out. So we're ready to roll out our pizza crust. I'm so excited, Jamie. This tastes really good. We're going to get the pizza crust going and the pizza toppings ready as well. So all I'm doing with the pizza crust is laying down some of my great parchment, unbleached parchment paper. And scare your husband with the rolling pin. That's always good times. So we're just going to real simply roll this thing out. You really want it to be as thin as possible. And it's really all a matter of preference as to how thin you want it to be. This is not a really good thick crust. So that looks good. So I'm just going to go and outline my pizza crust so it's going to look a little prettier when I take it out of the oven. So don't be afraid of the rolling pin. Your husband can be afraid of the rolling pin, but you don't need to be afraid. This is why you gotta love parchment paper. And here we go. We're gonna pre-cook this at 350 for about 22 minutes. Look at this pizza crust. It's not totally cooked yet, so that's okay because we're going to add our toppings to this. Most of us have a can of organic tomato sauce in our pantry. So all I'm doing is adding in just a smidge, okay, a quarter teaspoon of oregano. A smidge doesn't work in measurement. A quarter teaspoon of basil. And a wee bit of salt. Okay, a quarter teaspoon of salt. And for kids who are really sensitive to tomatoes, this is great because you can make it as fine as you want it to be. And that's great. That sounds good. So if you want to cheat, you can use this puree. I like to take the roasted tomatoes, which is great, and push this around on my pizza crust. I know I use my fingers.
That's the only way to make pizza.
Exactly.
It's made with love. Kids love helping to make pizza too because they feel really involved in it. And they get to put however much they want of things. So
yeah.
Good family affair.
And we love the day of cheese. It goes on pretty much almost everything in my house. I'm going to go ahead and add the day of cheese here. Too much cheese makes it a little soggy. So you may want to cook it a little longer and have it get a little bubblier. We're also using some organic sausage. This is the sweet Italian sausage, and the more, the better. And then we're going to add our sliced black olives. I love olives, but again, if you've got a kid that likes pepperoni, there's a great nitrate-free pepperoni from Boar's Hill. There's our pizza, ready to go in the oven. I'm ready. Let's do this. Our pizza's in the oven at 400 degrees. You can go anywhere from about 25 to 30 minutes, but again, you really want it bubbly and cooked. If you put it at a higher temperature, the fake cheese doesn't like that and it can scald. Your kid's gonna love you for such a great pizza. We'll see you next time on What's Left. If you have any questions, please email us at autismlive@gmail.com, or you can hit facebook.com/autismlive, or go to the Taco website at Taconow, TACANOW. There's thousands of recipes waiting for you to enjoy. We'll see you next time at Autism Live. What's Left?
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I am Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod.
Hi, my friend.
It's so great to have you here, and you're just a spitfire today.
Yeah, I was saying, is this too busy for the set? I don't know. I don't usually wear patterns.
I think you look great.
All right, well, thank you.
Wonderful.
Well, you know, I'm always proud of my sales. $38.
I love that.
I'm taking you shopping one day to all my bargain places.
Yes, but it'll have to be for the big girl shop.
I don't care.
I can't squeeze into the little girl clothes like you can.
There's more outfits for the big girls. And not that you're
Where
big.
are you shopping? Because I don't find that.
I'm taking you. Let's just leave it at that. We'll
My
talk
voice
about it
just
after
went
the
up
show.
7 octaves.
Yeah,
Did you hear
but
that?
you're not that big. You're probably the average size of the American woman.
Well, you know, but I'm bigger than the average thing in the shop.
But all right, I just want to say one thing about being small. I always say thank you that I am small. I don't have problems with, well, I do have a little problem with the midsection. You know, we all do at my age, 58. But my mother was really tiny. But let me tell you, when you're really tiny, when you're older, you look like Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies, and you become just a piece of bone and a hank of hair. So it's not that pretty when you get older. I'm telling you. You know, they say it's either the face or the...
Well, I'm telling you, when you're this size and you get older, you become a Shar-Pei puppy, so that's not good either. You really don't want to go there either. So,
all right, but
let's
talk about autism.
How about if we talk about autism?
People are now calling us the Lucy and Ethel of the autism world.
Yes, and I'm thrilled. If somebody said, I told this to somebody, they said, "Well, which one are you?" And I said, "Oh, I am Ethel. I am completely Ethel. Here we have our Lucy."
And then somebody told me we're the Kathy Lee and Hoda. And I said, please don't make me Kathy Lee. God love her.
Well, and somebody also had said that to me, and I said, are we going to have to come in without our makeup on one day?
And drink wine in the morning.
Well, good luck with that.
Okay.
If I were to drink wine, that would be the end of the conversation because I can't do that. But we have an exciting guest who's going to be on the show today.
I'm so excited.
Dr. Andrew Wakefield is going to be with us via Skype in just a few minutes. But we have some news that we wanted to cover before we did that.
Yes, and we have a wonderful story, and I think some of you out there, our viewers, might have contributed to this.
Okay.
An update on the opposition of Mr. Clank's show of support on change.org. We talked to you about this. We encouraged all of you to go to change.org for a little boy named Jonah who is not allowed to bring his service dog to school, a young boy with autism, and we just received word from the mother. Great news. She met for nearly 2 hours. This was about 2 days ago, I think, 3 days ago, this morning to discuss the issue of Jonah's service dog. What we have all agreed to, pending the lawyer drafting a letter, you guys always got to have the lawyers, they run everything, identifying all the points we agreed upon, and all of us signing it, is for Clank to be able to attend school with Jonah full-time up until the winter break. At that time, an identified group of people, all of whom represent a different area of Jonah's educational or home life, will convene to determine whether the dog is having a positive impact on Jonah's overall school experience. I am 100% fine with this solution. I do believe that we all heard one another clearly. We're all committed to making this happen. Thank you to all of you who have helped us in so many ways. It's so great to have people praying for us, signing petitions, carrying signs, waving a thumbs up. You are all wonderful, and she means you. Thank you.
What a wonderful story. Great ending. And I love that they're going to reevaluate.
Yes, they should.
That's absolutely
Nobody
what
in an
makes
IEP,
sense.
we always reevaluate goals and, you know, what services are being provided, as is really important with every child.
Absolutely. Congratulations. We're thrilled for Mr. Clank and for Jonah and for his parents. Another story that was in the news about a beautiful young woman who is blazing new trails in the fashion world. I'm talking about Carrie Brown, a 17-year-old who has Down syndrome, and she has scored a big modeling job with Wet Seal.
I'm so excited for this young woman.
Isn't this a lovely, lovely story?
This is such a great story. Her name is Carrie Brown. I think you said she's 17 years old.
And we've got a picture of her. I bet that's her Z card.
Isn't she darling?
She's absolutely beautiful. And kudos to her mom, who set up a Facebook page of her daughter doing modeling. And now, big client, Wet Seal, that she's going to be featured in. They've got a new line that, for us plus-size ladies, as we were talking about the plus-sizers before, it all dovetails back together.
That's right. And I will bet you anything, more people will buy Wet Seal because of this.
I will be going to Wet Seal to see if they have something that will look fashionable on me because of this.
I love this. They flew her to LA for the photo shoot. She asked for Justin Bieber music to play during the shoot so she could sing and dance while shooting. You know, Down syndrome kids are the most loving children. I mean, I was blessed with a Down syndrome brother, David.
Yes.
Most loving children on earth. And they told ABC News it was so much fun. She was a natural in front of the camera. And it says also, which you'll love this, showcasing women of all shapes, sizes, and colors is getting more and more standard for various stores and fashion lines, if recent campaigns by Diesel and H&M are any indication. So look out for Wet Seal, look out for Carrie Brown, and thank you to the retailers for realizing not everybody is smaller than I am.
Absolutely. And those pictures featuring Carrie on Wet Seal will be coming up in the next few weeks, so keep an eye on their website, Wet Seal.
Maybe, well, she's not from LA. Maybe we could do a Skype with Carrie.
Or maybe the next time she's in town, we'll have to have her in the studio.
Good to me.
But congratulations to all of us, and especially to Carrie and her mom. Okay, another new study that came out, and very interesting, from SUNY Buffalo State University about play. And I found this really interesting because we've been doing a lot of legwork around the studio getting ready for the holidays.
Yes.
We have something called the Festival of Toys coming up.
It's
very exciting, and we've been talking to a lot of different toy manufacturers. We're going to have a lot of giveaways. But really, I don't know about you, but I'm always interested to know what kinds of things will help our kids to play, be educational, and that will be reinforcing for them.
Exactly. That's the trick.
Isn't it? And so they did a little study. They got a group of children together at a children's museum, and they called it the Awesome Night, an awesome evening, excuse me. And they did some research about what kinds of play were really reinforcing for the kids on the autism spectrum. And what they found was that things that involve repetitive motions, lots of sensory feedback, and cause and effect results. Things that you do something and it makes a noise, or there's something that you can see that happens, were really reinforcing to kids on the spectrum, which I think that makes a great deal of sense, don't you, Nancy?
It makes a lot of sense. I have had a really hard time identifying board games that Wyatt likes, but he does like board games. So I'm really interested to see what kind of board games that you know, we've got coming up, if we have any of those.
We do.
Okay, great. And then, you know, I'm starting to see Wyatt. I'm revisiting some things that we used to do that weren't successful. And let me tell you one of them, a very basic little fun game, hide and seek.
Yeah.
He used to not get that the seeker had to count and then say ready or not, and the hider, you know, he wouldn't quite get it. He would count to like 3 and run, or he would not count, and he would yell, "Where are you? Where are you?" And I would say, "No, you don't ask them where they are. They're hiding," you know. But we have started using it with our afternoon ABA to teach counting skills, because we up the counting. We're like, this time just 10, next time 20, next time 50, next time 100, and next time 118. So we've been doing that.
Right.
And we've also been using it when he's hiding to have him learn new areas and new vocabulary.
Fabulous.
So it really just happened.
Yeah.
So I urge parents to maybe take a look at things that you may think of as elementary, or, you know, but maybe reintroduce and have fun with them again. Just because your child couldn't do it 5 years ago, 2 years ago, doesn't mean they can't have fun with that game now.
Yeah, absolutely. Revisit some of the oldies with the goodies.
And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a parent was, never think that just because your child rejects a sport, a game, or an activity the first time, that they will always reject it.
Yeah, it's a lot like food.
Figure out ways to incrementally do ABA with it.
Yep.
And actually, Lisa Ackerman, our friend from TACA, head of TACA, saw her on Monday at a big reception where we both received a grant from the Allergan Foundation. She said that her son is running. He's doing 5Ks. I said, how in the world did you get him to do that? Because I'd love for Wyatt to run. He could take off a few pounds. She said, I did a total ABA approach.
Awesome.
I rewarded him. She said it literally started with running, 50 yards.
Okay.
So it can be done. Stick with it.
There you go. Great, great advice. So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back. We have a very special guest who's going to be with us today to talk about a documentary that he's involved with. Of course, we're talking about Dr. Andrew Wakefield.
Yes.
Now, I have to say, before we go to break, that it's very important, a lot of the things that we cover here come with a certain amount of controversy. This story comes with a certain amount of controversy. Dr. Wakefield comes with a certain amount of controversy. And I want to remind everybody, at the beginning of the show, we play a segment that reminds everyone that all of our guests on the show have their own opinions, that they do not reflect on our opinions, on our sponsors' opinions, on the Center for Autism and Related Disorders' opinions. I think that everyone has a basic understanding of that. That goes for every single guest that we have on the show, but I want to remind everybody, we're thrilled to be able to talk about this very important topic with Dr. Wakefield. We welcome your comments, your questions to come in during the show, but I want to remind everybody that different opinions expressed here are the opinions of the people who have them coming out of their mouth, and that is it.
That's right.
It is in no way meaning that anybody agrees with anyone or disagrees for that matter.
Yes.
So there we have it.
It all is in line with our belief that you need to get all the information you can and then make the decision about what is best for your child or what also you put your belief system behind, right?
Absolutely. And we are here to impart information and impart news. And so that is our goal. And we count on you to be the intelligent souls that you are and make the decisions that you want to do and make the assumptions that you want to.
Well said, my friend.
Having said that, we're going to take a short break and then we're going to be back with Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Stick with us.
When you find out you're having a boy, you always think like, oh, he's going to play football, he's going to do this and that. And then when he's diagnosed, all those things get washed away.
It's like that piece that's always in the back of your mind, where is he, what is he doing, is he safe?
We really didn't know what we were dealing with. I wish that they could have directed me a little bit more and provided me some information.
I was a young mom. I didn't know what it was like to raise a boy, despite a boy with autism.
Hundreds of thousands of families are not getting the help they need for their children with autism all around the country. ACT Today is determined to bridge the gap. These families really have to go through a lot to get a grant. The application process isn't easy. The records, the diagnosis proof, they're really battling for their kids. So when we can give them a grant, it is so wonderful to see that they succeed in getting that help for their children. Our founder, Dr. Doreen is an amazing woman, and she is one of the world's foremost authority on behavior of children with autism. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she oversees every single grant we give. She is part of that process. People may think of autism care and treatment as simply schooling or therapy, but we provide important safety supports. Things like fencing, for example. The whole family's living in fear of that child running out into traffic. I recently delivered an iPad to a little boy with some of the apps that are out there for children with autism. Miracles happen.
I got the iPad from ACT.
From ACT,
What did it say? Can you repeat that, Dustin?
I got the iPad from ACT.
We have helped so many military families, and when I think of these brave families that are fighting two battles, one to protect our country and one for the right treatment and care for their children, it breaks my heart, and I think we have to do more as a nation to help them.
There's not a day that doesn't go by that we don't think about it. Some people say, oh, he's normal. You don't see the battles that I see every single day. My husband does have to deploy, and when they get on that bus, that might be the last time that my kids ever see them.
So I called, and they informed me that he had received a grant, which was like a blessing from above. I was just like speechless. I just started to cry because, without it, we would have been lost.
The ACT grant was a total miracle. Without that, they wouldn't be able to receive the service dog. So we're so appreciative what they've done for us as a family.
Recently, Act Today funded a program for military children with autism in San Diego, the Inclusion Films program, which is run by Joey Travolta, and teaches kids on the autism spectrum literal filmmaking skills. They learn how to make a movie.
Are we ready? There you go, got it. Okay. Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
It's so fulfilling when I get letters. One stands out for me, a boy who was 14 with Asperger's, and we gave him a grant to go to a drama camp. He wrote to us and said, "Dear Act Today, thank you for letting me belong for the first time in my life." These kids are remarkable. You know, we underestimate them. They're so knowledgeable, they're so capable, and we can change the life of a family, which means changing the life of a community. Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism. As Shannon and I told you before the break, we are joined now by Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who is coming to us live from London. Dr. Andrew Wakefield is an academic gastroenterologist. He is an autism advocate, and now we can add filmmaker to his list of accomplishments. Welcome to the show, Dr. Wakefield.
Hi, it's great to be with you.
And we need to mention briefly that we had hoped to have picture and sound with Dr. Wakefield, but unfortunately we're challenged a little bit today going across the ocean, so we will have just sound for Dr. Wakefield, but thrilled to have you with us. You're a very important part of a documentary that's being made, a story that we have been covering here on the show. The name of the film is Who Killed Alspaugh-Jackson? Did I say it right?
That's absolutely right, yes.
Okay. And Dr. Wakefield, what would you like people to know about this film?
Well, this is an extraordinary story and a terrible tragedy. It's one that we were following the story of this child before. And so it's unique in documentary history. In other words, we filmed in real time the events, all the events that led up to his death, and that's most unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're able to do is pinpoint the events that led to this tragedy. And it's not what anyone may imagine unless they, of course, live with the difficulties of autism. And encapsulated into this child's short life and tragic death are all the iniquities and injustices faced by families with autism, the hardships, the difficulties they face on a day-to-day basis, the medical establishment ignoring the parental story, the child's symptoms, making the wrong call, giving the child the wrong drugs, and eventually leading, I believe, to catastrophe. And that's the purpose of this documentary, is to bring out all of the elements that contributed to the death of this child. In other words, that is the purpose of the meaning behind the title, Who Killed Alspaugh-Jackson? It is not as simple as his mother or his godmother committed the act. There are many things that contributed to the death of this child.
Well, Dr. Wakefield, that was so eloquently summed up. We'd like to know, before we go to break, we're going to come back and talk in depth about the film and the making of the film. Can you tell us, before we go to break, how can people support this film?
Well, it's very kind of you. We are running currently an Indiegogo campaign, one of the crowdsourcing campaigns, which you can go to on indiegogo.com, and that's INDIEGOGO.com, and type in under search Who Killed Alspaugh-Jackson and find the campaign there with a description and a short introduction, a video introduction.
All right, we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to go through the timeline of events that led up to this tragic, tragic death of a young man, 14 years old, on the autism spectrum. We are talking with Dr. Andrew Wakefield, and we will continue doing that after these messages. Stick with us.
Skills is an online program that provides assessment, curriculum, positive behavior support planning for challenging behavior, and progress tracking, and it does this all in one place. The Skills assessment and curriculum addresses 8 areas of development, which even includes advanced higher level areas such as executive functions and cognition, which pretty much makes Skills the only ABA-based set of curricula for teaching more complex skills, things like problem solving, planning, self-management, perspective taking, and even inferring and predicting others' private events. Skills is a 4-step system. Step 1 is to add the child to your account. Step 2 is to start assessment. The Skills assessment is the only ABA-based assessment with psychometric research demonstrating the language subscale to have excellent reliability. Every area of human functioning and typical child development from infancy to adolescence was researched, making the Skills assessment the most comprehensive of its kind in the world, and we're quite proud of that.
Skills is easy to use. Simply click Start Assessment and begin answering questions. Or simply type in a keyword, find specific activities to assess, and add activities to treatment. Step 3. Choose activities. Once you've completed the assessment, Skills selects from a pool of 4,000 activities categorized by age, level, and skill type to provide you with exactly those activities each child needs. Start by choosing a curriculum, then a lesson, and finally an activity. Click the information icon to view prerequisites, ages in which targets develop, examples, and IEP goals. Click the video icon to watch a short video. Once you've identified an activity you want to teach, adding activities to treatment is a snap. Step 4. Start treatment. Here you can access customizable activity lesson details, add your own customized targets and exemplars, and edit an activity status such as introducing or mastering it. You can even print handouts such as worksheets, tracking forms, visual aids, and other materials. Skills also offers multiple progress charts mapping curriculum progress, lesson progress, and cumulative number of activities and targets mastered over time. The Skills language curriculum is categorized by verbal behavior type so that users can identify progress for verbal operants, such as echoics, mans, tax, and interverbals.
Skills is one of the only programs that provides the ability to write behavior intervention plans, or BIPs, for challenging behavior.
With just a few clicks, the outline of the behavior intervention plan is written for you and ready to be printed and implemented.
You can learn more about Skills today and get started by visiting us at www.skillsforautism.com, or you can call us at 877-975-4559. Skills. Progress starts here.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We are speaking with Dr. Andrew Wakefield, live from London. And Dr. Wakefield is telling us about the documentary he is making called Who Killed Alex Sportalakis? And I hope I said the name right. And Dr. Wakefield, we talked about the basic concept behind the documentary and the fact that you were there in real time as this story unfolded. So what we'd like to do now is have you go back and give us, as close as possible, a timeline of events that led up to Alex's death.
Certainly. As a sort of prelude to that, I remember I wrote in my first book that when I first became involved in autism in 1995-96, I was confronted with a tragedy where a mother had taken her child in the north of England, and they had jumped off her autistic child, they jumped off a viaduct 180 feet to their death. And I read this in the newspapers, and I was utterly shocked that this should have happened, that society should have allowed this to happen. And this mother was being pursued by social services at the time. But I was determined that was one of the motivating factors that got me involved in autism, because clearly something had gone terribly, terribly badly wrong that this should happen.
May I just interject to say that you use that as the foreword for your book, and I heard you do a reading of that, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room, and I don't think there's a mother alive of a child with autism that did not empathize with this mother. So I just want to insert that.
Thank you. And that, what's so sad, Nancy, is that all these years on, here we are with another story. In fact, within 2 weeks of this child's death, I think there were another 2 stories reported, very similar stories. But we became involved. Many people first came to learn about this story when it broke on Fox News in Chicago, and the child had been in restraints for 21 days.
We're talking about Alex.
We're talking about Alex. We're back to Alex Bordalakis.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Alex Bordalakis. So this was in the early weeks of 2013. He had been in 4-point locked restraint for 21 days and was clearly suffering from gastrointestinal distress. His mother kept saying to them, please, please, he's medically sick, he's medically unwell, he was vomiting, he had diarrhea, he couldn't keep his food down. And
they had excuse me, Dr. Wakefield, but they had put him in restraints in the emergency room because he was self-injurious. Is that correct?
Self-injurious, and they had said that he was a threat. He he became violent, and as many parents recognize, self-injury or violence to others in non-verbal children who cannot communicate in any other way, is often a manifestation of a child in pain who is trying to communicate that pain. And this is something that we have learned. It's been a bitter lesson that we've had to learn over the years, is that many of these children have been suffering for a long time without appropriate medical intervention because the medical profession do not understand how communication works with children who are non-verbal and compromised by autism. So this child was in dire pain. His mother knew it. Instinctively, she knew it. And of course, there he was with diarrhea and vomiting. And he was initially had been at Gottlieb Hospital, a sister hospital to Loyola. They had no pediatric facilities there for him. So after a long delay, he was transferred to Loyola. He was transferred there specifically for gastrointestinal investigation, that is upper and lower endoscopy, with pediatric anesthesiology. And those facilities were not available at the former hospital, Gottlieb. So when he got there, nothing happened, and he was eventually seen by a pediatric gastroenterologist who stood apparently in the doorway, did not approach the child, did not examine him, stood there for 5 minutes listening to the mother's history and left. And that was it. A few days later, a Spanish doctor came in and examined him and said, yes, indeed, he needs not only an upper scope, but a lower scope as well, and planned to perform it. Well, a few days after that, her boss came in, Dr. Berman, and apparently said to the mother, there is no need for any gastrointestinal investigation. If we heal his mind, we can heal his body. And that was the message that the mother was left with. And many
I believe we've lost him.
Oh, no.
Have you lost me?
There we are.
Oh, no, you're back. You're back.
Now we've got you.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
So some mothers became involved from a group called Autism is Medical.
Mm-hmm.
And we were contacted to ask if we could help out. Now, the obvious first step was to get this child to an expert like Dr. Krigsman in New York for scoping and diagnosis so that appropriate treatment could be instituted. So we flew up, we drove him 19 hours or so through the night to New York. An extraordinary journey in as much that we were there with the mother and the godmother, who clearly loved him dearly, with Polly, with a Marine.
Polly Tomey. Let's clarify, Dr. Wakefield. Polly is Polly Tomey.
And you and Polly together are the heads of the Autism Media channel, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And who else was with you? Keep going.
We had a Marine in the back, Jimmy, an ex-Marine, who was looking after Alex and keeping him calm. Alex could not wear any clothes, so he traveled naked during the winter months through the hills of Pennsylvania, the mountains of Pennsylvania, to New York. It was absolutely extraordinary. The rest of us were freezing to death, and Alex would not keep any clothes on. We eventually got him to New York, where he was seen by Dr. Krigsman. He was then investigated appropriately. And I remember the moment that Dr. Krigsman put the gastroscope into his stomach, though it was studded with ulcers, hundreds of ulcers throughout his stomach, a kind of ulceration that would have had you and I in agony on the floor. And this child had been putting up with this for a very long time. And when he broke the story to Alex's mother, she was she just broke down. It was so distressing because it was the realization that she had been right all along, and yet she had been unable to prevail upon the medical profession to treat him appropriately.
Now, Dr. Wakefield, I'm going to stop you for just 1 second to clarify. So at this point, you and Polly have been brought into this case to not only help, but you've decided to document finding out what is going on with this child. And at this point, was it your intention to document how he received help and got better?
Yes, it was. And in fact, it's a very good point you raise. This was part of an ongoing reality show series that we were creating of a before and after, taking children who were clearly severely compromised, who were undiagnosed in terms of the medical aspects of their problem, and putting together the best people that I've come across in autism over the last 18 years, including, of course, Doreen.
Dr. Doreen Grandpichet.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So she is a member of this, what we call the autism team, the A team.
Yes, we're familiar with that, and we're going to help you identify children that fit that prototype.
Trying to help families get access, get answers, and get access to therapies. So you're there and you're filming this in real time, finding out that Alex is full of ulcers. The mom is understandably both upset and relieved to know that we've got some answers, I would imagine, but overwhelmed with how long this must have been going on. Pick up the timeline for us there. So what happens at that point?
So at that point, he now is, we're able to, Dr. Krigsman is able to put him on the appropriate therapy. And he was started on a full gluten casein-free diet. He was started on proper nutritional supplementation and anti-inflammatory medication. The problem came is that he went back to Chicago with his mother, and there was nowhere for them to go. There was nowhere where he could remain in a safe haven where the treatment could be instituted properly. The mother, the father, and the mother had become estranged. And what was very, very difficult for Alex is going back to the apartment from which he had been taken by the authorities, because every time he heard a siren, he had a meltdown. He could not handle that. And
the
so,
sensory overload, obviously, was too much.
And the memory of sirens and being tied up, and it was too much. So they went from hotel to motel. He was noisy. He was violent. They couldn't stay in one place for any more than a couple of nights. It simply wasn't working. And he would never sleep. And the mother and the godmother had not really slept properly for 3 months or more.
And you were filming some of this. Were you able to get there to Chicago from time to time to film what was happening?
Yes, we were. What was happening is that they were documenting it by iPhone, for example, and we flew back around the time of Autism 1, the Autism 1 conference, tragically to learn that he was back in hospital. What had happened is that he'd been given a diagnosis. It appears he'd been given a diagnosis of Lyme disease without any testing, and as a consequence of that had been put on some powerful antibiotics. With the second antibiotic, he had a major deterioration and was readmitted, this time to Lutheran Hospital. We went to see him in Lutheran, and it was a tragic sight. The mother was completely broken. The godmother had a huge black eye. Where Alex had lashed out, not out of violence, but just inadvertently lashed out and hit her, and he was tied to the bed again, and it was a terrible situation. And we put out an appeal on the internet. Sadly, it didn't come in time, and what I think will horrify people, particularly in light of what's going on in healthcare in the States at the moment, is that we got a last text from Dorothy saying, we have been told by our insurance company there is no further funding, we're being put on the street, there is nowhere to go, we don't know what's going to happen. That was a week before his death. So here is a child who's in 4-point lock restraints, had required intravenous sedation apparently, and suddenly someone decides that there's no more funding for his care. Moments earlier, they were going to put him into a long-term psychiatric institution. Now suddenly he's on the street. And at some point thereafter, and we now have a series of communications of that intervening week, things just spiraled out of control, and there must have been a point at which she decided that enough was enough, that she could no longer bear the suffering for any of them, and they took his life. They tried to kill themselves, and
yes,
did not.
and let's clarify, Dr. Wakefield, that when you say she had enough for the whole family, herself, the grandmother, and Alex, correct? Because she did try to take her own. The caregiver. I'm sorry.
Yes. The caregiver was his godmother, and yes, it was an attempted murder-suicide, and it failed. In fact, we went to see them in Cook County maximum security prison, and the greatest tragedy for them was waking up. The worst thing of all. They said this should never have happened. We don't remember anything about it, but we never wanted to wake up.
Right. It was their intention to take their own lives.
It is such a terrible, terrible tragedy.
Horrible tragedy. Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Dr. Wakefield, we're going to talk about some of the controversy surrounding even the telling of this story, as different news outlets have covered this film that you're making. So for those of you watching, stick with us more with Dr. Andrew Wakefield after these messages.
The Institute for Behavioral Training provides courses in applied behavior analysis for the treatment of autism. Access IBT e-learning videos on the move and learn at your own pace.
I'm going to talk a little bit about intensity of
IBT e-learning makes any location your classroom on the go.
So our objectives for today are to really learn what is autism and how is it diagnosed.
Get professional guidance with IBT face-to-face training. IBT face-to-face training courses prepare you to effectively implement ABA-based interventions. Choose between small group and one-to-one instruction. Earn BCBA supervision hours via one-to-one video conferencing.
So I had a chance to review your BIP today. You know what? It looked really good. You did a good job with that.
IBT, continuing education courses. Earn credit through webinars, conferences, article reviews, and e-learning videos. You can learn more at ibehavioraltraining.com. IBT, 360 degrees of ABA training.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Our very special guest on the phone all the way from London is Dr. Andrew Wakefield. We're talking with him about a documentary that he's involved with the making of called Who Killed Alspaugh-Jackson? And they were on the ground covering in real time this family, the intention to cover how this child was going to improve once he was given the right therapies.
Proper medical treatment.
Yes.
That would address many of his behavioral issues he was having that were medically based.
Right, and that was their intention that while they were filming, but unfortunately, before enough help could be given to them, the mother and the caregiver attempted to, they murdered Alex and they attempted to commit suicide as well. So we wanted to pause for just a second. We're going to ask Dr. Wakefield to go through with us the events of how Alex died. It's very gruesome. We want to warn you, if you're watching with small children, now would be a time to have them get out of the room.
Definitely.
We think it's important to talk about what happened, but it is particularly gruesome. So Dr. Wakefield, walk us through what happened on that day.
Right. I think that just to set the scene, the reason that we are so concerned about this story is that if we are to understand how to prevent these cases occurring in the future, we have to analyze this in great deal. What were the events that precipitated the catastrophe? Alex, and the other thing to say is that the news reports we have discovered are largely wrong. Okay. Many of the details provided by the sort of early knee-jerk news reports are not in fact true. What appears to have happened is that Alex was given an overdose by his mother or the caregiver, that they then took an overdose themselves. It became clear that, at least from what we're told, that the overdose was insufficient or of the wrong medication to achieve the effect that they had intended, and they ended up stabbing him in the heart, certainly his mother. Now, it is said that there was a confession. However, that does not appear to be the case. And certainly when we talk to them in Cook County Penitentiary, then they'd woken up in different places apparently. They had not conferred on their story. They'd been kept separate ever since then, had not had a chance to talk. But both of them said exactly the same thing, and that is, we do not remember anything about the events leading up to it or until we woke up. We remember nothing at all. So there are many holes in this story that you have yet to be filled in, and those will be available. That's the rest of that story will become clear as the documentary emerges. We now have elements of that now bring the story together and tell the full tale of what happened.
Well, let me ask you this, because what was reported was that Alex was stabbed several times. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding, but
Okay.
again, the precise number is certainly unknown.
And then did his mother, after the overdose failed, did she inflict wounds upon herself, and did the caregiver inflict wounds upon herself?
Now, we have no evidence to suggest that is the case.
Okay.
But what also was reported that when the stabbings in the chest area and the heart weren't being effective, that they also slashed Alex's wrists. Is that
Again,
accurate?
we have no evidence on that at the moment.
Okay.
We will be discussing that. With
And
police.
additionally, they reported that they killed the cat as well.
Apparently the cat was not dead.
Okay.
The cat, again, was a failure in the reporting.
Okay. Dr. Wakefield, did you have any idea that Dorothy was this desperate and that she was planning to take Alex's life and her own?
I didn't. However, having encountered this degree of desperation in the past in autism parents, this degree of sleeplessness, this was an extreme situation, and that was the reason when we were with them at Lutheran, we put out a plea on the internet for some safe haven for them to go, for him to be put on the right medication and to see that treatment regimen through. We felt terribly frustrated. We felt that they had been let down, that we as well had let them down, that somehow there was a missing piece of this jigsaw, and that this was not going to end well the way it was going. And sadly, that turned out to be true in an extreme way.
Well, Dr. Wakefield, this film has not yet been completed, but it's already sparking controversy. Recently, when CBS Morning News reported on this story, there was a bit of backlash where self-advocate groups felt that the story and your documentary were condoning, saying that it was justified after what the mother had gone through, the killing of a young person on the autism spectrum. Do you have any response to those critics?
Well, the desire of certain groups, including autism advocate Erin Neiman, is that this was a hate crime, should be labelled as a hate crime, and the mother and the godmother should be charged accordingly. It's interesting they say that knowing absolutely nothing whatsoever about the background or about the mother at all. In other words, his position is that there is a view that children who are autistic are better off dead. That is absolutely not the case. And what was clear to us throughout the filming of this is how much she loved him, how much she cared for him, and there's absolutely nothing in this that smacks of a hate crime. This was a crime of passion, most certainly, and it was a crime, no question. And justice must be done, but it must be seen in context of what actually precipitated it, and it was not a hate crime at all.
But to be clear, you're not suggesting in any way, shape, or form, being aware of what Dorothy went through and what the caregiver went through, you're not condoning an autism parent taking their child's life for any circumstances, correct?
Absolutely not. The reason for doing this, the reason for doing it is if we are going to prevent these events in the future, we have to understand what led to them. And sort of comments that are plucked out of the air like hate crime are totally unhelpful. What we need to understand is why this child was in pain, why his suffering was allowed to continue, why he was put on multiple psychotropic medications that made his condition worse without addressing his medical needs. What were the events that led to his death? In other words, who killed Alex Spaudalakis?
So you're advocating, let's be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Absolutely. This must not be allowed to continue. And the way to prevent that is to understand its origins.
Okay, and the way that people can help to support, if they would choose to help support this film.
Once again.
You're asking for them to participate in your Indiegogo account, correct?
It's Indiegogo campaign, Indiegogo.com. And the title is Who Killed Alex Spaudalakis?
Can you give us an update, Dr. Wakefield, on where Dorothy is today, where the caregiver is, and what are the consequences of this tragic situation right now?
Yes, I went to see them appear in court 2 weeks ago in Chicago. They are currently still in Cook County maximum security, at least as far as I'm aware. They are kept apart. They have submitted pleas of not guilty. Dorothy on the basis of insanity or temporary insanity, I believe. And we've had long discussions with various lawyers involved in the case, which has been most helpful.
And what is she charged with, Dr. Wakefield?
She's charged with first-degree murder. I think they're seeking the maximum penalty on the basis that Alex was had special needs and therefore was particularly vulnerable. So they are looking for a life term in prison on the prosecution side.
We are almost out of time, but we had some people who wrote in on Facebook, a couple of comments for you. One person wanted us to tell you, they said thank you, and that we appreciate all that he does. Another parent wrote in and said, what can parents do on a national level to advocate? Because the 1 in 54 will soon mean that neurotypically typical students will be in the minority, and as a result, to start coursework training teachers and administrators now. Would you like to comment on that quickly?
Well, I think it's such an important, it's projected that by 2025, 1 in 2 children in this country will have autism. That's a staggering level of disease. It's totally unacceptable. And you have an entire country, an entire economy devoted to the care of children with autism. Something has got to be done. And if this film helps to bring attention to the various elements that conspire to cause autism and impede its adequate medical care, then that is a good thing. Can only be a good thing.
Well, Dr. Wakefield, we thank you. I wish we had more time. There are many more things we could talk about.
Yes.
But we'll have to find another time to do that. But we thank you so much for being with us.
We thank you, and Dr. Wakefield, our best wishes to you in completing this and in your efforts to assist getting the real story out. And thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
All right. Goodbye.
Certainly, it brings to mind, that there are more families that are out there that need more help, and making sure that this kind of tragedy doesn't happen again.
Shannon, I just have to say that I am so close to this story because I hear from parents every day. Running autism care and treatment today, I hear horror stories, and sometimes we don't know the full picture. It's so easy to judge, and I think what is really important here is that we look at all the facts, and it really is a giant warning for us to pay attention to this epidemic. And I know we can both say that for us, there have been moments of complete desperation. I call it the kitchen floor club, where we've all been down on our knees after a tantrum, after, something with our child that has made us beg for help. And if that can happen to me, and if that can happen to you, we know there are families out there suffering enormously. So I think just saying we have to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. The conversation will continue on this. And my prayers are with everyone involved, and God bless Alex.
And if you are one of those people and you are in a place of desperation, please ask for help and continue asking for help. There is no excuse for taking your child's
there isn't.
life.
And ACT Today, you know, we try desperately to raise money. When we give out grants, we look at the most needy situations. We do have a rating system, and I can only think, why couldn't we have helped this family if I had known?
And we all do what we can, which we have like 30 seconds. Can you tell very quickly about one of the things that you're doing?
One of the things that I'm doing, if you happen to live in the Los Angeles area, I have my church, the Prince of Peace Episcopal Church in Woodland Hills. We are starting an exceptional families ministry. Children with special needs, the most underserved church community. Please contact me at nancy@act-today.org. And if you're interested in this, on October 19th, we're going to be doing it every month.
We're out of time, but thank you so much. Give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye for now.
Fascinating conversation today.